We're in a really interesting spot right now as it relates to business. If you look at the data, about 14% of organizations are in the lead, with 43% saying they're feeling kind of like they're just getting started, and the rest feeling like they're falling behind. So if you're someone who feels like you're working harder, putting in more, but don't feel like you're really going anywhere, you're not alone. And that's not just me guessing or licking my finger and sticking it in the wind. This is me looking at some of the world's best data as it relates to the workplace. I'm Christopher Lind, and this is Future Focused. And this week, I'm going to be talking about the 2026 LinkedIn Talent Report. They're talking about talent velocity, and this isn't just your average survey or anything like this. We're talking about an organization that has over 1 billion members and handles 14 million pieces of job data. This is a global census, not just a survey. Now, this week, to be clear, this isn't just about AI and AI tools. I want to dig into the actual metabolism of what's happening in organizations so we can talk about where are they and what are they doing and how do you stay ahead. Because I took the time to go through this whole thing. I've been involved actually in the process of building the report. And let me just give you a little bit of a teaser. The biggest takeaway is it might not be what you think. And it's certainly not necessarily about just running out and buying some more tech. But before we get into it, if you find the content I create helpful, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would like this, share it with somebody else who may benefit from it. If you're not subscribed, please do so. And if you really feel so inclined, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Christopher Lind and support the show. Okay, so like I said, before we get into it too far here, to give you some context, LinkedIn just released its Talent Velocity Advantage. All right, this is a corporate word that you might hear more of in 2026 and beyond. But I want to go beneath just what the data says and talk about what's really in here, because there's a lot to know about. Now, the way I'm going to structure this, there's really 3 big segments that I want to break down. I'm going to talk about overall kind of the validation of some of the things you probably already know. I want to talk about the skills piece of things and some of the things that we're seeing on a global standpoint, and then get into, okay, but how do we actually make this work? So it'll be a mix of a report breakdown as well as some really practical, so what do I do with this rather than just have it? And in some cases, I would highly encourage you to go download the report, because I think there's a lot in here anyone, regardless of what level of an organization you're in, can use to help establish the case and give some credibility to some of the things I'm going to talk about. So it's not just you suggesting it. It's actually data backed by what I would consider one of the best orgs as it relates to workplace data. So let's talk a little bit about one of the biggest things here, because I mentioned some stats at the very beginning, talking about the, there we go. This is the breakdown of how things are looking right now. So if you look at the curve, I mentioned 14% of organizations would say, hey, like we're doing really well. We're crushing it across. And I'll talk about what these velocity indicators are. They have to do with like, where are the areas that are really driving the difference between the leaders and the laggards. But you can see on here that like close to half of people are right in the messy middle. And this is very consistent with what I'm seeing in the work that I'm doing, which is a lot of people have this. They've bought the tech over the last few years. They have a fair amount of programs implemented. They have good intent. They might even have solid strategies and some, integrated approaches that they're doing, but it doesn't really seem to be moving anywhere. Everybody's really busy working on these things, but it's not taking root. It's not actually driving things forward. And what I'm consistently finding when I talk to people in this space is they're treating the work that we're going to get into today more like a project. it's a thing they have to do. They may have a strategy for how they're implementing an AI initiative. They may have something that they're planning on doing as it relates to change management. They might have a new business initiative they're trying to push forward. But it's just a project. It's not the ethos of what they're trying to do as an organization. And you may say, well, what's the difference? Well, I think I would hope everybody who listens to this can relate to that feeling where you've been involved in a project where it feels like everybody's just going through checking the boxes. They have the checklist, they know what they're supposed to do, but people are just kind of doing it, which very much makes sense right now. In the fact that, people are burned out, they're busy, they're overwhelmed with AI, they're uncertain about the economic state of things. And so as a result, many people are going, yeah, I don't really know, where do I go from here? Now, when you dig into, well, what does it look like to actually accelerate this stuff? There were 4 things that really stood out in the data as to what is that differentiator and what takes it from we're just doing a project, or what are some of the key things in it that are actually driving us forward. Now, this would be more of what I would consider some of the ingredients in the recipe, if you will. One of them is the leadership moment. If you don't have leadership buy-in on this, you're going to be holding back. Now, if you're a employee feeling like, yeah, well, that's not me, that's okay. But I think going back to the point of being able to use some of this data to say, hey, this is how we actually get ahead. Now, if you're a leader, you need to take this seriously, because that's a pretty significant factor right there. That if the leaders are just going through the motions, they're saying the right words, they're saying, yeah, we want you all to grow. Yes, we're invested in your future, but it's not necessarily backed by actions and really oomph, if you will, people are going to feel it. And that is going to be the differentiator for that. Everybody talks about culture. Okay, that's fine. But are you actually invested in the culture? Do the things you say you stand for as an organization, do people see that when they show up in the office, when they show up in a virtual meeting, when they see the way they handle a customer interaction? Is that actually embodied in what's going on? Or is culture just a thing that gets thrown around as a slide, or maybe not even that? As you can imagine, leading with AI is on the chart. And I will say, this is where it gets diverse. And if you've listened to my stuff along the way, I think this one, there's a lot more meat in this than just, hey, are you doing stuff with AI? Okay, I talk a lot about the difference between AI use and AI effectiveness. But what we are seeing in this is the organizations that are being effective with AI, that are actually using it to, and they even use the word I use all the time, amplify success. Not replace, not swap things out, but actually amplify the things they're doing. They are seeing a significant difference. These are the people who are in that top 14%. The integrated talent system, what's interesting is this is one of the biggest differentiators for what they're calling talent velocity. And one of the things I actually will challenge here, not necessarily saying don't do this, but I think if you actually were to dig into this one specifically and look at the nuance between it, you would quickly see there's some nuance, because integrated doesn't just mean you slap and when they say talent ecosystem, if you've been in an organization, you know what it's like to try and move around in an organization. Depending on how frictionless that is what I would determine is a integrated talent ecosystem. Like if it's relatively easy for people to move internally in an organization, I would say you have a fairly good talent ecosystem. People can find the jobs internally. If you're seeing a lot of internal mobility, people are moving around, exploring different opportunities. You tend to fill roles with internal candidates a lot. Not saying it's always about that, but you see more of that healthy system. It's integrated. Where I think it can be dangerous is if you go too far with this, especially on the AI, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're saying is, is there incentive to stay in the organization? Or when people think about growth, whether that's upward or just expanding, do they think about the company they're in? Or do they think, yeah, if you want to move, you got to go somewhere else? Maybe you can come back later and you can be a boomerang employee, but you certainly aren't going to find it by sticking around here. And that's a huge one when you think about what's going to be great, which is why it does not surprise me at all that it came out on top. And then the last one is career power, which I have mixed reviews on this, but I see why it's on here. And I think what it has to do, it's tied to the previous one. I don't like when organizations just say, you need to own your own career. Sometimes I see that used as a way leaders delegate or kind of distance themselves from their responsibility of making sure they're developing and growing their team. It can be used that way. Where I see career power here being the differentiator is when employees actually have the support, the safety, and the ability to be able to move around, to have some ownership over their career. So what I'm not saying is you're in an organization where they just constantly yell at you, well, if you want to grow, that's on you. You have a chance. That is not an organization that has a high career power score. Where you would see that would be more where people feel like their boss is supportive of them moving around, is actually encouraging it. They feel like they actually know where to find out about opportunities. They feel like they can actually get there. And that's where the integrated talent ecosystem and the career power, they go hand in hand. You can't have career power if you don't have an integrated talent ecosystem. But all five of these things really come together and say, this is what is going to differentiate you and put you in that 14%. Now, you should be able to look at this and go, well, where are we on this? Like, how am I feeling about this? Or what has been my experience? Now, if you're a leader, you actually largely own a lot of this. If you're an employee listening to this, that should give you an indicator of, boy, if I feel like I'm spinning my wheels all the time, well, you know what? Here's some data points that would validate maybe why that is. Maybe we scored 0 on all of these, or we're in the red on all of these. Well, that would do it. And I think this is the kind of data you have the opportunity to push and encourage in your organization to say, hey, if LinkedIn, who's involved with every company almost on the planet and has more data than anybody on what's going on in organizations, is saying, this is how we get ahead, maybe we should listen, because that's what's going to get us there. Now, naturally, you're going to get the folks that are going to say, well, yeah, but operationally, we've got work to do. We need to be pushed ahead. We need to actually be successful as an organization. One of my biggest frustrations in organizations is this idea that there's a difference between organizational performance and taking care of or enabling the people in your organization. And I feel like that's been exceptionally pushed down as AI has taken the rise, and people think you can kind of swap AI in and that can drive your success. It can't. But if you're pushing up against somebody who doesn't see that connection, who maybe struggles to understand the impact of talent, which is your people, and the velocity your organization has, this is some of the data that takes this beyond HR fluff. Stuff that's like, yeah, of course HR is going to tell us we need to take care of our people. I'm thinking about our bottom line. This is the kind of stuff that actually ties to your CFO and your, operational leaders. Profitability. There's a huge difference here. 88% of organizations, their confidence to be profitable is tied to their talent ecosystem, their velocity there. Versus the ones who are in the 14%, like they're feeling really good about this and it's pushing them forward, versus the ones that are like, if we aren't feeling too great on it, they're scoring low in this, is basically the way you can think about this. All these things are operational metrics. And you may look at some of these and go, well, aren't 3 of the 4 related to HR? They actually aren't. Having sat in the C-suite for a number of years before even going into the advising and consulting, I can tell you retention, the ability to attract, and then like aligning your skills, your talent, the employees you have to your key priorities. Those 3 things, those are C-suite things that you're tracking. Those things resonate. And so when you actually look at like, why would we care? If you're making the case, say, why should we care about those 5 accelerators? Why should we be invested in doing those things? These are the kinds of things where you go, well, there's a over almost 20, I think if I average this out, it's like 28-point difference in the leading orgs versus the kind of like stagnant or lagging orgs. as it relates to their overall performance. The metrics that matter the most are what's showing up here. And so the data we're seeing in here, this isn't just, hey, this is another survey, this is another analysis. This is actually breaking down the companies that are doing the best. What are they doing differently so that everybody can look at this and go, well, so now how do we achieve those same kinds of things? Now, I hope at this point, none of this should be like, this is the first time I'm ever hearing any of these things. I really, truly do hope that anybody who is listening or watching this, at least on the surface, the thought of one of these 5 things isn't I have never in my life considered it. If it is, well, then absolutely you need to be doing this. But for a lot of you, you may be going, okay, that makes sense. Then the question becomes, well, why are we not doing it? And, depending on where you are in the world, one of the things that I thought was most concerning on this is, to my US colleagues, which is a lot of my audience, North America is falling way behind as it relates to skill-based organization and workforce planning. This is one of those things that has been talked about for years. There is a open recognition that everyone is saying, we know we need to focus more on skills rather than jobs. We know we need to break down the work that needs to be done in the organization based on the skills required to pull it off. We need to be looking at that. We need to be analyzing these things. America is not the hottest country in the world when it comes to this. When you look at what's happening in Asia Pacific and in Europe, North America is falling way behind as it relates to this. And so again, nobody's crushing it. Okay. We still are in the minority. Years of saying we need to be focused on skills. We need to do more with skills. We need to tie work to skills. We need to be more flexible and move away from strict, rigid jobs and focus more on broad skill-based things so people can be used, more broadly within an organization. We need to incentivize based on that. Okay, we've been talking about that for a very long time. At best, 41% of companies are actually making progress in this, but US folks, almost 80% are not even where we need to be at this point. That's 4 out of 5. That's not great. That's not great. And that's a really tough love moment right now to say, what are we doing? What are we doing? And, you don't have to look at the economics of where things are at right now to go, well, organizations are struggling right now. And given all the data I've covered so far, we know what we need to do. The question is, why aren't we doing it? And here's the thing. Let me just say this. I can tell you from the work that I do, almost every organization that I go into, when they say we know, everybody will acknowledge, yes, we need to do more with skills. We need to know, more with skills. Then they're trying to do more with AI. We need to do, AI can help us with this. AI can help us with skills. And yes, it can. But here's the thing. AI is only as good as the data you put into it. And 90 plus, maybe 95% of organizations I talk with or work with, they say they want to organize around skills. I don't know that I actually bump into anybody. I'd say probably 100% of organizations would say, yeah, we need to do more around skills. But when I go, great, what do you know about the skills that you have right now? Show me your data. Pull it up. Where are you tracking this? How accurate is the data that you have? It's crickets. There is no response to that. And what's really unfortunate about that is it does not have to be that way anymore. There are very, very efficient ways to be able to assess what do we have in our organization. I'm not just talking about doing a report on the job descriptions. I'm saying actually understanding what skills you have in your organization and who has them and how strong are they and where are they and how are they tied to where they need to be. This kind of work, it used to, I'll be the first to admit, 10 years ago, that would have been a multi-million dollar, complex project that you would have been working on forever, that by the time you even made progress on it, you'd be outdated. And so I understand why a lot of organizations said, yeah, we know we should. There's just no good way to do it. That is no longer an excuse. It just isn't. And I'm telling, if you don't believe me, if you're not sure how, reach out. We can have a conversation. I'm not even saying you have to hire me to do it. I'm saying I'll have a conversation with you about how some of that can come together, because there are really effective and efficient ways that companies can quickly assess, what do we have in here and where do we need to be? Now, you got to do the work to know where you need to be and what you need to do to pull that off. But there are very quick ways where you can start to heat map this and go, all right, well, if we don't want to look like this, if we don't want to be 8 out of 10 organizations in the US right now that is talking the talk, but not walking the walk, going back to what I said before at the very beginning, is being a talent velocity organization, is it just fancy words, or are you actually doing it? This opportunity to actually assess, what do we have from a skills standpoint? How are we actually going to make progress on this? How are we going to communicate to the rest of the organization where we are, what we're trying to do, and how we're going to move it forward? It's possible today. And here's the thing. If you're just trying to skip some of these steps and jump right to, well, can't we just throw AI in here to accelerate people's development? Can't we just throw AI in here to do more around mobility and, help recommend the right jobs to people, move people into the right roles, rather than having to go recruit outside. Some of the work that I've done around, like, hey, rather than laying people off, why don't we look to see what we're trying to accomplish with this? Let's find those people who can quickly bridge the skills we need. We don't have to lay them off. We just repurpose them very quickly. You're not going to be able to do that with AI if you don't have quality skill data to be operating off of. AI will just make an absolute mess of it. And this is that step that a lot of organizations are trying to skip. And you can't do it. Now, I will say this. You're not going to want to approach that at an enterprise level. And that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I'll see organizations make, is they will jump in and go, all right, we have to do this for everything. That is just a foolish mistake, in that, not that you can't move quick. You can actually get to enterprise fairly quickly, but you do need to do some experimental work to figure out, like, hey, where are our rich sources of skills data? How do we actually acquire and validate those? What do we have in place to actually build this? And I would recommend starting with that, focusing in on maybe a job family, or a quick audit on a key area to try and assess, like, let's do some of this stuff. But like I said, these are things that can be done in weeks, months, not years, and can be done at very reasonable costs. We're not talking $1 million. I mean, we're not even talking $1 million on half of these things. And the return on investment is massive on this. And so what I would say is, this whole skills blind spot, it's not even a blind spot. That was one of the things that, as I was putting this together and preparing for this, I'm looking at this going, in some senses, it's a blind spot. It's like the worst blind spot on the planet, because everybody knows it's there. Everybody's like, yeah, we really know that we need to do more with skills. The data tells us this. It's been telling us this for years. And we're like, yeah, but why aren't we doing it? Well, we're kind of busy. It's like the person that knows they need to lose weight because their doctor's been telling them you're going to have a heart attack for the last 10 years. And they're like, I know I really should. I probably should change my diet and maybe start exercising. And you've kicked it down the road, and now you're in the ICU getting a triple bypass. Like, this is kind of the level we're at this point. And the data supports it behind this. Now, the third and final segment that I want to touch on here, though, is the fact that this isn't something that you can just flip a switch on and say, perfect, let's just do it, and we'll just take care of it. We're going to flip a switch. We're going to start an initiative tomorrow. We're going to get the data, and then we're going to do this, and it's going to all happen. The organization is going to transform overnight. Is it accelerated? Yes. Are the costs driving down significantly? Absolutely. But one of the things, and I'm actually in the report talking about this, is the fact that, there it is. How you approach this has a huge impact on the effectiveness to an organization. So let me make this a little bit bigger as we go into it here. As you look at this, if you just throw this at the organization like spaghetti at the walls, if you just say, hey, we're going to, roll out more AI tools, or we're going to do this skills work, and then we're going to, push it out to the organization. We're going to do internal mobility or, skill-based job families type of a thing. And you just tell the organization via a corporate email and move it along. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And the data proves this. There's a 28-point difference between the leaders and the laggards, and the ones that are actually committed to doing change management right. And if you see what I added to the report on this is, actually looking at what skills they need and then helping them understand, not just, hey, you need these skills, but okay, well, let's assess them. Let's show you where the gaps are. Let's give you a roadmap of what you need to do to develop them. Let's provide you with the time, the capacity, and the resources that you need to be able to grow this so that we can then move it. I talked about this kind of two-pronged approach to this, where it's not just about saying, all right, we know we need to do more with skills. We've done some things. We have some tools out there. Now everybody go and take care of it. It's all on you. That will not work. And change management, in my opinion, is one of the biggest misses in organizations as they start to, move forward. They do the things, they get to the starting line, and then they wonder why they haven't crossed the finish line, why things have not, taken off. And it's because, well, you didn't actually lay out a plan to help people move along the continuum. And, a lot of people see this as a flaw in humans. Well, they're just so slow to move. Actually, no, the same is true with AI. People think AI just magically does everything. It doesn't. Preparing training data, most people don't know what it takes to actually prepare a training data set. If you did, you would realize that is literally the equivalent of digital change management. Like, you don't just take a bunch of garbage data, throw it into an algorithm and go, ta-da, like there it is. No, you clean the data, you validate the data, you test, you iterate, you move it forward. That is digital change management. Your people need the same thing. You're making skills changes, great. You need to help them understand what you're doing. You need to show them the way. You need to be there to support it. You need to make room to do that so that you can. And now the good news is, one of the things that came out with this is that the human skills, the human capabilities, going back to a lot of what I talk about, where we have to look at where does AI thrive and where do people thrive. And one of the things that they pulled out of this was there were some key skills in organizations that make the biggest difference. I won't say that these are the only ones that matter, but they're the ones that really are showing a multiplier effect in the organization. Now, I'm not going to break every single one of these down. You can go take a closer look at it in the report if you want. But the one that I really want to call attention to on this is the building trust piece. Because honestly, not only is it the biggest one on the chart, but it's the one that if you fail at this, everything else will fall down underneath it. If the foundation of your organization is not built on trust, if the people in your organization don't know how to build, establish, and maintain trust, it doesn't matter how great you are at operational excellence. It doesn't matter how great you think you are at influencing. It doesn't matter how good your leaders are at interpersonal, intercultural skills, working across global boundaries, things like that. If trust is not there, if they don't know how to build and establish that, none of it matters. Literally none of it matters. And so I don't want to say, only do that and ignore everything else. But what I would say is that should be at the top of the chart, especially right now at a time where everybody's wondering what they're going to be doing. Everybody's wondering if their company is going to dump them next week. Everybody's wondering what the future of the world holds. And if you aren't an organization that is keenly focused on building, establishing trust, you're cooked. You are cooked in the months and the years to come. And the thing I will add to this, and then I'll stop beating on this one, is there's nuance to this. I do know a lot of organizations, and I would say many organizations are working at the building trust skills. What is often missed, and I wrote about it last week, is it's not just the building activities. It's keeping a tight pulse and mitigating the breaking activities that are happening. And so you may work on building skills in your employees and your leaders on how to build trust. But if they're over here breaking trust at 5 times the speed in other ways, because they're not paying attention to this other stuff, you might take 1 step forward and take 4 steps back. And I think that's one of the things where I do consistently see organizations slip up is they'll go, okay, here's these trust building activities. Okay, again, going back to what I said in point 1, they're treating it like a project. Okay, we've identified building trust as an important thing. Great. Okay, let's do those 4 things we identified. Let's build these 4 key capabilities. Okay, great. Do we also know the things that we're doing that are eroding and destroying trust in an organization? Oh, well, we're a little too busy to think about that. You do that, it is a cosmic miss, and everything you're doing to build trust, you're undermining it on the other end. Now, the thing here that I think really kind of concludes this piece with the change management is, I say this all the time, we have to go slow to go fast. And I don't mean go slow. I would even just say we need to be intentional and surgical to go fast. And right now, the cultural air is let's just go fast and do more, and eventually something's going to stick and it's going to push us ahead. And that's not going to work, because right now we've got a lot of bloated trucks. And if we don't take things off the trucks and we just add more things onto it, if you're already overloaded and now you're like, hey, we're going to add a new AI initiative. We're going to add a new building trust initiative. I know you're all doing this stuff, but now you also have to build this skill in your organization, in your talent set. Add this new goal to your 5 other goals type of a thing. People are crushed right now under their own capacity limits. And so it's not just about saying, how do we make the truck we're driving move faster? It's about saying, what things in the truck do we need to unload? What things do we need to take off? What things did we spin up that we really didn't put a lot of thought into this, and we should probably just table for now? Going back to some of the skill stuff. If you're sitting here trying to run an AI skills development initiative and you haven't even cleaned up and have a clean source of skills data, stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing and go, let's go back. Let's pause this. Let's communicate that we're pausing it so we don't have people still working on it. And let's do this the right way so that as we move forward, things can accelerate. And, kind of wrapping this up, I genuinely hope that for the most part, through this episode, the things I talked about, in general, we're kind of nodding your head along the way going, that makes sense. Yeah, in general, if you don't agree with any of the things that I said today, I don't know what to tell you, because this is not just Christopher Lynn's opinion. This is based on data from the largest workplace data organization in the world saying, here's what it is. So at this point, if you go, I don't agree with those things, well, then I don't know what to tell you. But I hope that most of you, anybody who's listening to me for long, would be kind of nodding their head going, all right, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe we need to think differently about this. Maybe we need to adjust a little bit here. But in general, I get it or agree with it. I think then it goes, okay, well, so what's stopping you? What is stopping you from doing it? Because we keep talking about it. And going back to the global thing, depending on where you are in the world, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. And even in the best, 6 out of 10 are making progress on that. 14% of organizations are actually moving forward despite years and years of talking about it. We need to take action on this. We need to move it forward. And I get a lot of people are like, I'm just not even sure where to start. Or I'm not sure where to focus my attention right now. If you need that help, reach out, send me a message. Let's have a conversation. We'll talk about what it looks like. We can work through some of this stuff so that you don't just stay in the 40%, 43% of just kind of sitting there, or worse, you start slipping further behind because the stakes are too high right now. Stakes are way too high. So this has been Future Focused. Again, I would highly encourage you to go out, download the Talent Velocity Advantage report by LinkedIn. It just came out last week. It's about 53 pages. There's tons of great insights in there that you can use to help support it. And again, if you need help, I'm just an email or a direct message away. With that, I'll see you on the other side.